Well, I don't know about you, nothing gets me in the Christmas mood like singing Christmas songs because everybody knows the best way to spread Christmas cheer is singing loud for all to hear. No? Has no one seen Elf? And Christmas songs, Christmas songs, some of them are just like that one, just fun and happy. And then some Christmas songs are really deep and like theologically very deep and thoughtful. And this next song we're about to sing is one of those. It's a song that just expresses the desire to see God show up, for God to come and make things that are wrong right again. It's called O Come, Emmanuel. And I thought just to get us kind of in the right frame of mind for singing this song, we might read a passage from one of the prophets together. It's from Isaiah chapter 9. I'm going to throw it up here on the screen. And I'd like us all to read this out loud. Will you read this with me? Let's say this together. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Let's sing together.
And ransom captive Israel. That mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God sing rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee. Oh, it is our spirits by thine advent disperse the looming clouds of night, and death's dark shadow rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee. Oh, it is brighter. Oh, he's here with us. Emmanuel, our God is here with us. Oh, you're here with us. Emmanuel, our God is here with us. Oh, he's here with us. Emmanuel, our God is here. He's here with us. Emmanuel, God is here with us. Oh, you're here with us. Emmanuel, God is here with us. Oh, you're here with us. God is here with us. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found. Leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I didn't deserve it. Still, you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You've been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, so you paid it all for me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, chases me down flights till I'm found. Leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I never deserved it. Still you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, a lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I didn't deserve it. Still you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. God, we thank you so much for your love for us, your grace for us. God, we could never earn it. We don't deserve it, so we might as well just have all of it. God, just pour it out on us tonight, tomorrow, this week, this Christmas, God, every day. We just want more and more of your love, undeserved, but so, so wonderful. We thank you so much for it. Amen. Well, before you grab a seat, this is a great opportunity to meet somebody, introduce yourself, and I got a question for you. What's something that you keep track of or that you monitor? It might be sports stats or stock prices or sales, anything like that. What's something you kind of keep track of pretty frequently, pretty consistently? Ask somebody that question and introduce yourself.
Great to see you guys. Welcome to Terra Nova on a beautiful Saturday night. Thank you for joining us online, for everybody watching online as well. Hey, I would love to take a second and introduce you to a new friend of mine. This is Dominic Jackson. Say hi, Dominic. Hey, Dominic.
Hello, everyone.
And Dominic has just joined our Terra Nova pastoral team. Very excited about that. Going to be leading the charge on young adults, everything from high schoolers transitioning into college all the way through 20s and 30s, covering a lot of ground there.
Yes.
And I got to ask you, Dominic, what's something you keep track of? Probably like sales at the grocery store. No?
Yeah, that definitely. I would say gas prices these days, but
anybody say that? That's actually a really clever.
Yeah. What about you, John?
For me, I was thinking probably the Chicago Cubs. I see my friend sitting here with a Cubs hat, so that triggered that for me. But
yes.
I tracked that. Well, I got to tell you, it's been really exciting getting to know Dominic over the past few months.
Yes.
Hanging out, having coffee, and now having you on our team too. It's just been great getting to know you.
Yes, I'm just so excited and super passionate about young adults. Just so blessed. My wife, Megan, and I have just already felt at home here. So thank you guys so much. And if you're a young adult, you know a young adult, or you just want to hear more about what we got planned, I would love to talk to you after service.
Awesome. So we're going to be hanging out in the lobby, watching kids sing
Yes.
and drinking hot chocolate after this.
Great combo. Yeah.
So feel free to introduce yourself to Dominic, say hi, and local Southern California guy.
Yeah.
Grew up
Long Beach most
area.
of my life. Yeah, and my wife and I just moved to Costa Mesa like 12 hours ago as of this morning. So yeah, we're loving it here.
All right, so make sure you say hi to Dominic before you check out today. Let's give him a hand. Man, excited to have him on our team. Well, hey, my name is John, by the way. Welcome to Terra Nova. I got a name tag to prove it. By the way, turns out Terra Nova name tags not considered valid forms of identification for the TSA or pretty much anywhere else but Terra Nova. But they're helpful and appreciated around here, helps us get to know each other. And I just want to say, hey, welcome to Terra Nova. If you're our guest here, checking us out, maybe your first, second, third, fourth time, thank you so much for joining us. And if you're joining us online for one of your first times, thank you for joining us here as well. For those of you who came in person, you were probably handed one of these when you came in. We call it the weekend program. I'd love for you to take that out and check it out. And in there, you'll find all things Christmas these days. Lots going on. As you work your way to the back of the program, you'll see this little fold-over thing we call the Connect card, because it's all about connecting with each other. Do me a favor, just tear that off with me right now. Grab that pin sitting next to you that I'm sure you moved out of your way when you sat down, and throw your name on there. I think I mentioned my name's John. You can write your own name or mine. That would be weird. Let us know a little bit about yourself. You can check off some boxes, things about you or things that you're interested in. By the way, the Connect card is a great place to ask questions, things you're trying to figure out, or stuff you'd like more information on. It's also a great way to tell us how you're doing. How we can be praying for you, and we go through these every single week, read, and often we try to get back to like lots of you, but we can't do it all the time. But it's just fun to keep. It's a great way to keep in touch with each other. You can fill that out during the gathering. Throw that in the offering basket. Guest services team will be at the doors on your way out. You can just drop these in the offering basket on your way out while you're working on that. I got to tell you, Christmas is coming up. Anybody excited for Christmas? Anybody done with all of their shopping and everything? Got the Christmas cards in the mail, like a handful of you overachievers. That's amazing. Very proud of you. We are getting ready for Christmas around here too. We're going to have 3 gatherings. Check this out. We've got an outdoor gathering on Thursday the 23rd, and we're thinking this might be a great service that you can invite some friends to who you don't think might be quite ready to be in an indoor gathering, but they might be willing to come to an outdoor gathering. Bundle up. It might be chilly. Who knows? It might be 90 degrees. It is Southern California. We're going to have some blankets and some hand warmers and lots of hot drinks and cocoa and wassail and things. So it's going to be fantastic. Then 2 indoor services, and we've got these handy cards that we actually stuck on your chair because a lot of you use the app now. You don't get the physical program, but we wanted you to have this. So grab this card and be thinking and praying about who you can invite with you. But here's the deal with these services. If you check out these days, there's one on Thursday. There are 2 on Friday, and here's what you need to know about that. We never have services on Thursday and Friday, which means we have 0 teams in place already for a Thursday service. We have no Thursday teams because we meet on Saturday and Sunday. So here's what this sheet is all about. And I actually really love this because this gives all of us a chance to be part of this together. Rather than being just kind of a spectator of the experience, we all get to be a part of it, praying, inviting friends, bringing treats. We've got this thing we call internally Super Serve Tuesday. We all get together on the Tuesday right before this Thursday, or are going to because Christmas Eve services begin on Thursday. So we're going to be doing that and just getting like the kids' swag bags ready. We give away these cool little bags to all of the kids who come, who sit in the adult services. Not that it won't be entertaining enough. I hear the speaker is very entertaining. However, if you're 6, maybe not so much. So they're going to have stuff to color and things like that. And so we're putting those together. We got putting the programs together, all kinds of stuff. You can sign up for that. Of course, we would love to have great, fantastic guest services teams for that Thursday gathering and for both of those Friday gatherings. Just wonderful, warm people who can welcome those who are coming. So please sign up for that if you're friendly and warm, and you know who you are. And then for those of you who are not friendly and warm, sign up for Supernova Kids. No, I'm just kidding. Do not tell Angela Bruggeman that I said that. No, if you're extra wonderful and warm, sign up. So we want great teams. So Supernova Kids, here's what we're going to have. On Thursday, they're going to be doing this Christmas cookie decorating thing. It's going to be a lot of fun if you're into that. So that might be the one for you to sign up for. We'll have nursery through 6th grade on Thursday. And then for our Friday gatherings indoors, we're just going to have nursery through kindergarten. But we still want great teams to love on our kids and teach them about Jesus. And so all of that to say, there are all of these great ways to sign up. One of the teams we need is a Thursday after the service outdoors. We have to pack everything that's outdoors up and bring stuff back inside for the Friday services. And so we want some great teams. If you're planning on coming Thursday, go, hey, I'll hang out for an extra half hour or so after the gathering, and I'll help tear all that down and bring it back inside. So that'll be fun. It's going to be a really, really wonderful Christmas. I'm so excited to be able to celebrate this together. And so please take some time during our gathering, look at ways that you can say, hey, I'm going to be part of this. We're a community together. We're doing this together. I'm checking some of these boxes. Let us know how to get a hold of you, and we'll reach out to you this week. So you can be working on that. But hey, that's coming up in a couple of weeks, just a couple of weeks away. But tonight we are in part 2 of this series we kicked off last week that was so fun. So many people were getting back to me going, hey, that was really meaningful, what we talked about. And so now we pick up where we left off last week and take it to the next level for part 2 of our series, The Unsettling Solution for Just About Everything.
Christmas is coming, and they're coming too, bringing some gifts and some baggage for you. 1 day, 2 day, 3 days or more. How do we survive those we adore? Your boss, whose idea of a holiday gift is making you work a long double shift. Your date for mom's dinner, who still lives at home and is not well acquainted with hard work or a comb. Perhaps it's your spouse who's on your last nerve, and you'd like to give them just what they deserve. Re-gifting that sweater which you know is too small, or coal in the stocking, or maybe nothing at all. Whomever the problem, whatever the reason, we all want to care for others this season. Yet friends and family, much loved though they be, can create much drama and much misery. What's to be done with all the confusion? Might we suggest an unsettling solution?
Well, hey, good evening, everybody. How you guys doing? All right, well, my name's Scott, and it's great to be with you. I'm looking forward to continuing this series in just a moment, but I figured, hey, to get us going tonight, you know what everybody wants? Everybody wants a game, and if everybody doesn't want it, it's okay. I want a game, and so we're going to do a game to get going tonight, and we'll have a little Christmas fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's not going to be lame at all, so don't worry about that. But I needed a couple volunteers, and so rather than saying like, hey, anybody want to play the game? And it's 8 minutes of me going, no, seriously, anybody want to play the game? I got a couple of people beforehand, and so I'm going to have them come up right now. We've got Oksana and Mike, and they're going to come up to the stage. You guys give them a round of applause this evening. Oksana, you want to come over on this side, and Mike, you can hang right over here. You can get a little closer. Yeah, I mean, I'm not that embarrassed to be with you. So, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And so we're going to do a Christmas-themed trivia game, okay? I'm going to toss out some questions, and you're just going to answer them. It's not going to be embarrassing. There's not going to be any shame involved, at least intentionally. So how it will work is I'm going to give you the question. You're going to have 5 seconds to answer it. And if you get the answer right, you get a point. If you don't get it right, then no steals or anything like that. It's just going to be no point for that. And yeah, we're going to do 3 rounds. And at the end of the 3 rounds, the person with the most points is going to be our winner. And you're playing mostly just for the satisfaction of playing the game. But last weekend we were giving away candy canes, and I found one. So you're also playing for a candy cane. And so that's how it will go, okay? And so we'll go ladies first. So Oksana, you're going to be first up in this one. And so let's go ahead and click to the first question in our game. Here we go. It should be this. According to the movie It's a Wonderful Life, this is for you, Oksana, what happens every time a bell rings? Every time a bell rings, and you got 5 seconds.
I have not seen this movie.
You got a little help from Linda. Linda, what was it? An angel gets a swing. Point for Oksana right there. There we go. Very good. All right, Mike, question for you, equally as easy. All right, we're going to go with this one. In what modern day country was St. Nicholas born? This is not your question. Okay. This is not your question. We're going to get back to the slide before. What modern day country was St. Nicholas born? You know this. Everybody knows this one. Norway. That was not it. Okay. It was Turkey, Mike, but that was a good try. Okay. Yeah, modern day Turkey. Okay. So next question for you, Oksana. We've got Charles Dickens and his classic book, The Christmas Carol. What is the first name of Scrooge? Ebenezer Scrooge. 2 points for Oksana. So there's 3 questions, Mike. So if you're going to stay in the game, this is it, okay? Again, another simple question, Mike. How many total presents were given during the song, The 12 Days of Christmas? So just got to do the math real quick. You got 5 seconds. Carry the one, and they're all laughing because they all know it. Mike, and the answer is?
Do I get a phone a friend?
364. No. And now, based on that math, you're mathematically out of the game too, but that's okay. We'll just have fun. We'll go to the third question. Oksana, how do you say Merry Christmas in Spanish?
Feliz Navidad.
That's perfect. Oksana's nailing it. Wonderful. Mike, final question for you. In the movie Elf, Buddy enjoys spaghetti topped with syrup. What are IHOP's 4 official syrup flavors? It's the
Regular, blueberry.
They want it so bad. And the last one is butter pecan. They've changed. I know, boysenberry. Well, it's okay, Mike. It's okay. Yeah. Well, we had what was it 2.5 to 0. So Oksana is our winner, and as promised, this is yours.
Thank you so much.
And Mike, you're just a great sport, and I feel bad. I feel like the questions are kind of stacked against you. So I got a gift card for you. This is $50 to Cheesecake Factory. Wow. Let's give it up for both of them. You guys can go ahead and take a seat. That is going to sit right with everybody for the rest of the night. I know it. Well, fantastic. Last night, we had a get-together. We had a group of our staff team and our directors got together, and we celebrated Christmas. We had a party. We incorporated some games into the night as well, and I'm happy to report everything went well. Everything went well. There were no yelling matches. There was no serious cheating. And then when I went out to the car, my tires were not slashed. And so everything was good. And I'm sure y'all are proud of us for that, because you know that there are times where game nights can get a little contentious, right? Where a game night can separate, or it can just tear apart a family or a group of friends, because there are times where things just get heated in the middle of that. And you've been in those situations where you're playing a game and there's clearly the way the game needs to be played, but yet in that moment, there's a time where, you know what, somebody decides they're going to change the rules in the middle of the game. Has that ever happened to anybody before? You're playing a game, there's a way that you know, hey, this goes, but somebody decides, no, this is the way that I'm going to play. And when that happens to you, I wonder, how do you respond in that situation? Somebody suddenly changes the rules. And I've observed there's different ways that we go along with that. There are people who they're kind of quiet with it, but they're a little passive aggressive. And so when that situation happens, they kind of sigh or mutter, to themselves, just kind of under their breath, like, are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. And if I lose because of this, like, I'm going to be frustrated about it. And then there are other people that have a response it's a response I wish I could claim for myself. It's the type of person who, in the middle of the game, a rule gets changed, and while the rest of the group is freaking out, they're the person that just goes, hey, you know what? It's not that big of a deal. Like, I've actually seen some people play with those rules, so just relax. Everything is going to work out. And while they're saying that, I'm doing the third response. And the third response is this, is that there's sometimes people who get a little, extra competitive. And so when that happens, well, people like me, we can't deal with it. And so we stand up and we go, hey, buddy. Hey, so nice creativity there. I like what you're doing with the rules, but there's a right way and there's a wrong way to play the game. And I could clearly show the rules to you if you're able to read them, and you'll recognize that there's not a lot of wiggle room in Uno, amigo. Like, you got it? And so let's go ahead and play the right way. And like I say, man, I'm usually the type of person who's going to keep track of rules, and I don't like if you switch up the rules mid-game on me, unless it benefits me. Then I'm going to go along with it, and maybe you understand that. So we're in the middle of this series that we started last week. It's called The Unsettling Solution for Just About Everything. And in this series, we're recognizing this reality that as we read through the story of Jesus' life in the 4 biographies, we always see that these people who were nothing like Jesus just loved being around him. They were drawn to him, and they were drawn to the way that he spoke to them, the way he treated them. They were drawn to the worth that he saw in them. And the Apostle John, he puts it beautifully, just this description of Jesus and what he was like and what he embodied. In John chapter 1, verse 14, he says this, "The Word," which is Jesus, "he became flesh and made his dwelling among us." And that's what we're celebrating right now. That's what Christmas is about. And John says, "We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father," and he says, "full of grace and truth." And like nobody else in history, Jesus was just that. He was completely grace and completely truth. He was full of both of those things all of the time. And it was specifically the grace that he showed to some of the people who you would least expect to receive it. That was the thing that was most mind-blowing. And last week, we kind of unpacked grace a little bit more. We defined it and said that grace is something that it's undeserved, it's unearned, it's unearnable favor and relationship. And as we began to talk about grace a little bit, we realized that grace is what we want most when our guilt is exposed. Like when everything is out in the light, we go, "Oh, I just need grace. Please show me grace." And it feels amazing when that happens. But on the contrary, grace is what we tend to withhold most when others' guilt is exposed, because grace is so unsettling to see given when it is clearly not earned. And I know it's fun and it's silly to joke about things like game nights and arguing over rules and things like that. But what happens when we have to move beyond that and the stakes are just they're so much greater? When it's not a game, but it's real life. And we see people who have really wronged us. They've betrayed us, they've let us down, they've wounded us, or people that we genuinely love and care about. And they've lived these lives where they have these behaviors or values that blatantly oppose us or blatantly oppose God and God's values. And then out of nowhere, they decide they want a do-over. Out of nowhere, they decide that they want a fresh start or a hall pass. And you and I and everybody else knows that they have done nothing to deserve that clean slate. And so when that happens, are we supposed to be the type of people who seriously just ignore that? We ignore the rules. We forget the math. We stop keeping track of their debts and treat them as if none of that had ever happened? Because who does that? Well, in Luke's biography of Jesus' life, we're told the story of a small man with a long name. It's a story you might be familiar with, and it is found in Luke chapter 19, and we're going to jump into it right at the beginning in verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. And so from the get-go, we see some things here. We see Jesus is traveling, and he's traveling from region to region. And as he's doing that, there was always a crowd that was surrounding him. And sometimes we go, okay, so does that mean that there's like dozens of people? But more like probably hundreds or maybe even thousands of people who are following Jesus as he is traveling. And they are wanting to catch a glimpse of Jesus with their own eyes. And one of the people who fit into that category is this guy named Zacchaeus. Last week we talked about Matthew and Matthew's his past as a tax collector. So Zacchaeus, he shares that occupation. And in fact, he's a chief tax collector, which means in the ways that he was seen as a traitor and a thief and somebody who was exploiting his people for personal profit, he was seen even more so than anybody else because he was a guy that was making money off of everybody in his community, everybody that was part of God's people. He had turned his back on the people of God, and he was exploiting them in some really serious ways. He was exactly the kind of person that if you have kids, you're going, hey, stay away from people like Zacchaeus. And so, verse 3, he wanted to see who Jesus was. But because he was so short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. And so as we know a little bit of who Zacchaeus was and his reputation and the stigma related to him and all of that, we still have to know that in spite of that, in spite of the way that he lived his life, Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus. He knew that Jesus was going to be passing through Jericho, and so he decided that he had to be there for that moment. But the question becomes why? Why would somebody like Zacchaeus go, you know what, I want to be with Jesus? And it could have been a number of different reasons. Maybe Zacchaeus is going, you know what, I've heard about some of the different miracles that Jesus performed, and it would be incredible if I got to be an eyewitness to those miracles. And so I want to be there for that. Or maybe Zacchaeus had heard a little bit about the way that Jesus was teaching these concepts that were so different from everything else religion represented. And Zacchaeus is going, okay, you know what? I'm kind of open to reconsidering my life's direction. And maybe he's going, I want to see who Jesus was so I can hear what Jesus is teaching about. Or maybe it's something different. Maybe Zacchaeus had heard about the way Jesus treated people like Zacchaeus. But whatever the case, he had made up his mind, hey, I've got to see him. And so he does what you do when you've got vertical limitations, and up he goes in the tree, right? Verse 5, when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. And think of that context. So it's not just Zacchaeus up in the tree and Jesus walks by and it's just them and they lock eyes. It's going, no, there's a crowd of people around. And this crowd of people knows all about Zacchaeus and what his life has stood for. And they probably have personal connections, whether them or their family members or their friends, who Zacchaeus has benefited from taking their money, right? And so they are looking and they're in that situation. And right there in front of everybody, Jesus calls out to that traitor, to that thief, and he says, Zacchaeus, get down here. Come on, man, get down here now. And when the crowd hears that, what do you think they're thinking? What do you think is going through their minds? What are they expecting? If I'm them and I'm in their background, I'm in their shoes, I've got some hopes for that. It's something like, yes, yeah, finally somebody's going to put this guy in his place. Finally, he's going to get what was coming to him. Finally, somebody's going to make an example out of him. Finally, somebody's going to let him know what God thinks of the way he's living his life and what God thinks of people who treat others like him. He's going to get what he deserves, and I'm so glad I'm here to watch it. And so, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. But then he continues and he says, I must stay at your house today. So Zacchaeus came down at once and welcomed him gladly. And everybody there is going, what? Like, that's not what you meant, Jesus. Are you kidding me? Are you serious here? You're not going to use this opportunity as a moment to call him out for the life that he's been living? You're not going to humiliate him like he's humiliated all of us? But instead, you're going to call him down here, and you want to spend time with him. You want to go to his house. You're going to treat this guy like a friend? That's ridiculous. That's not fair. That's not okay. That is not what this guy deserves. And what about us? I mean, Zacchaeus is the guy who shows up late. He climbs up the tree to see you, but we've been following you the whole time. I mean, we've been doing our best to take you seriously, even when it costs us to follow your teachings. We've been devoting ourselves and trying to follow you, trying to please God as best as we can, and now you're going to go out of your way to associate with people who are nothing like us after what he's done. And verse 7 captures this. It says, all the people saw this, and they began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. And I like that word mutter because we get it. We get the feelings that are associated with that. We get the disappointment that they've got. We understand how they're disillusioned, they're disgusted. This is not fair. This is unsettling to them. But Jesus, in that day, he has decided that Zacchaeus wouldn't just get an opportunity to meet him, but he'd get a moment to meet grace in its truest form. And if you read the next few verses of that story, what you unpack is you see that Zacchaeus' life is absolutely changed. You see repentance, where he's been living his life one way, and then he comes face to face with Jesus, and after that moment in interaction, he turns a completely different way with his life. You see Zacchaeus, a man who has been stealing from people, he pays reparations back to those people, and then you see this rebirth, this brand new life that he has, where he is placing his faith and his trust in Jesus, and that all comes to Zacchaeus because of the grace that Jesus extends to him. See, that grace was the solution for everything that was wrong inside of Zacchaeus. And there was an awful lot of stuff that was wrong on the inside of him. And yet, when you hear that story, it might feel warm and fuzzy, but if you're anybody else that's in that crowd that day, that is not how you're feeling in that moment. See, it would have been so frustrating to the rule followers of the day, because it was as if the rules to the game that they were playing were suddenly changed. And the rules that everybody knew were changing right in front of them. I mean, Jesus was still calling sin, sin, and sinners, sinners, but then he broke the rules because he was offering this acceptance and forgiveness that was unlike anything they had seen expressed in the rules before or lived out around them regarding religion. And it goes to the point where he not only accepts and invites these people into relationship, but then he would later go and lay down his life for them, or for us. And Jesus wasn't starting something that was easy. It wasn't starting a fashionable trend of something going like, hey, you know what would be fun? You should be like me, and let's do hard things. He was doing so much more than that. He was establishing this upside down kingdom. And it was a kingdom that looked nothing like the kingdoms of this earth. It was otherworldly. It was the way things were always intended to be, and yet it was the intersection of earth's brokenness and heaven's holiness. And in this kingdom, the kingdom of heaven, everything was feeling and functioning so differently than the way people had experienced it. It was a different economy. It was a different set of ethics, a different set of values, and a different way of relating to people and relating to God. And Jesus knew that this would look and feel so much different than everything else we'd experienced. And so as he taught, he wanted to illustrate it. He wanted to bring it to life. And so he would often speak in these parables as a way of showing us what the kingdom of heaven was like. And since the overwhelming defining mark of this kingdom was grace, and since we as people have a very complicated relationship with grace, well, parables illustrating grace became very prominent. For instance, we see a great one in Matthew chapter 20. He begins and he says, "For the kingdom of heaven, it's like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. About 9 a.m, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, 'You also go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' So they went. He went out again about noon and about 3 p.m, and he did the same thing. About 5 p.m, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, 'Why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing?' 'Well, because nobody has hired us,' they answered. He said to them, 'You also go and work in my vineyard.' When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, 'Okay, you're going to call all the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first.'" And a common feature of Jesus' parables was that as he's telling them, there would be a person or a character that represents God, and then there's a figure that represents people. And so as that's going on, the audience is putting it together, and they're going, okay, so the landowner, that is the character who represents who God is. And then the workers, they represent people. And they're putting something else together. It's that the landowner has an absolute accounting mess on his hands because, well, he agreed to pay, the people who started at the very beginning a certain wage, but then people came in and they were working for different amounts of hours, and how is he going to sort that out? But I imagine that as they're listening to that and going, okay, landowner, God, and there's a financial mess that he's got to figure out, and as they're thinking about the workers, they're maybe seeing themselves and seeing their own stories in those different workers. And I bet there's some people who go, you know what, based on their lives, well, they've been doing their best to follow God as faithfully as they can, as long as they can remember. Hey, they know they're not perfect, but they've been as faithful as they can be. And so they're seeing themselves, they're seeing their story in those workers who started out at 6 a.m. And then there's others of them, or some of us, who we identify with the workers who we put in half a day's work. We arrived a bit late. And then there are some of them and some of us who hear about the workers who showed up at the end when it feels like it almost was too late for them to even matter. And we go, yep, that's kind of my story. But whatever the case, we wait and we wonder, okay, well, what am I going to get from the landowner? Verse 9. The workers who were hired about 5 p.m. came, and each received a denarius. So when those who were hired first came, they expected to receive more. But each one of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. These who were hired last worked only 1 hour, they said, and you've made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the work in the heat of the day? And so in other words, they are clearly bent out of shape here. If these workers, the 6 a.m. starters, if they were moved to Jericho that day with Jesus and Zacchaeus in the crowd, they're protesting. They're saying, wait a second here. Okay, that's Zacchaeus, and that's great that there's the potential that his life might change, but don't you know what he was doing before he climbed up there in that tree? And Jesus, aren't you aware of how faithful we have been to you and following you and doing our very best to do what you've called us to all along? And now you're going to give him the same grace as me? Now he's going to get the same undeserved, unearned, unearnable treatment that I got that was also undeserved, unearned, and unearnable. Right? There's something that's going on, and it doesn't really make sense to them. They're going, how is that fair? And none of it is. But in verse 13, he answered one of them. He said, I'm not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Well, take your pay and you can go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, didn't I promise the winner of the game a candy cane? And that sounded fine until you realized there was a gift card. Like, okay, now you're feeling off about it. But next, Jesus, he puts a spotlight, and maybe it's not on you, but it is on me, in all the times that we have this resistance to seeing somebody receive grace, and it's an unlikely scenario. Maybe it's an unlikely person. Verse 15, the landowner says, don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I'm generous? It's like, why is it such a big deal? Because I'm choosing to be generous. Okay, isn't it my call? Aren't I allowed to show undeserved, unearned, unearnable love and favor to whomever I desire? Aren't I allowed to invite anybody I want into a relationship? Isn't that my call? Or do you have an issue with that? Are you feeling a little envious? Are you feeling a little jealous? Are you feeling maybe a little bit resentful because I've chosen to show them the same grace and the same mercy that you got to receive? Or do you believe those things are only yours to be found? Are you feeling resentful because I've decided to be so generous? And that's the question that meets us face to face today. You see, are we truly ready to not only be beneficiaries of grace, but also bestowers of it? Are we willing to identify not just silly examples, but the people in our lives who most frustrate, who most annoy, who most antagonize us, and offer them something that they clearly do not deserve? And it's maybe kindness, maybe it's a second chance or a third chance or a ninth chance. Maybe it's willing to have a conversation with them and potentially try to empathize with them. Maybe it's offering them a seat at our table and saying, hey, I'm willing to be in relationship with you in spite of all the math. I'm willing to let go of that. And the reality is we don't have to do it. We don't have to do those things. We can choose to do the math. We can choose to keep score. We can choose to hold on to grudges. We can choose to delight in others' hardships. And there is plenty of that in the world. And we can add to it if we'd like to. We can be people who choose to celebrate God for giving us what we didn't deserve while demanding others earn what we've been freely given. And there has historically been plenty of that in the church as well. Or we can live a different way. And it is a way where we choose to advance not our own kingdom and not the kingdoms of this world, but the kingdom of heaven. And it's a kingdom that is so backwards that in this world's eyes, it just doesn't make sense. And it makes us feel uncomfortable at times because we are used to what we see around us. And it made a lot of other people uncomfortable too. And so we just looked at a parable where Jesus is trying to illustrate the kingdom of heaven. And there's another parable where we see an older brother, and this older brother is really disappointed. And he's disappointed not because his father failed to love him when he'd been faithful, but he's disappointed because his father chose to love his younger brother in spite of his lack of faithfulness. And there's this other really sad and kind of disturbing story that we see in Scripture. It's found in Jonah, and I'm not referencing just a guy being swallowed alive by a giant fish. What I'm referencing is what we see that story conclude with. And as we get to the end of it, we see Jonah's anger when God is showing complete forgiveness and complete mercy to the newly repentant people of Nineveh. And we have different translations of the scriptures, and there's a translation referred to as the Message. It's a paraphrase of the scriptures, and I love the way it puts it in Jonah chapter 4. It says, Jonah was furious. He lost his temper. He yelled at God, God, I knew it. When I was back home, I knew this was going to happen. That's why I ran off to Tarshish. Continues. I knew you were sheer grace and mercy, not easily angered, rich in love, and ready at the drop of a hat to turn your plans of punishment into a program of forgiveness. And how weird is that when we are so bothered by those incredible attributes of God being displayed with other people, right? It calls us out. Because grace is something that is just absolutely amazing when we're recipients of it. But then it is just utterly unsettling when we observe it in places and in people that we believe it has no place in. And when the rules get changed in a way that benefits us, that's a pleasant surprise, right? When I find that in spite of the things I've done and the decisions I've made, God is still willing to extend a second chance and love and mercy and relationship, I'm going, that is incredible. But when I've already counted somebody else out and God does the same to them, I go, I don't know if that's a good idea, God. And that's a weird spot to be in. It's unsettling when grace conflicts with our own sense of what's fair. It's unsettling when the math we've been keeping, it doesn't add up. It's unsettling when rules haven't been kept. And it's increasingly more unsettling when we are called to extend that same grace to people and it feels like it's going to cost us something significant. And next week, as we continue, we're going to dive deeper into that, of how it can be so easy to see others' shortcomings and being oblivious to our own faults. And we'll look to move beyond receiving grace and trying to extend it even to the people who are most difficult for us to love. But as we wind down, I want to talk about the kingdom of heaven. I want to talk about 3 observations that we see about that kingdom. And the first one is that in the kingdom of heaven, everyone is invited. In this kingdom, everyone is invited. And I love the way it puts it in Romans chapter 3, verse 22. The Apostle Paul writes, and he says, that we are made right with God by placing our faith in Jesus Christ. And this is true for everyone who believes, no matter who we are. And that is a beautiful thing, that no matter who you are, and no matter what you've done, no matter if you showed up for work at 6 a.m. or you stumbled upon grace in a sycamore tree, no matter how faithful you followed, or no matter how undeserving you feel, that in this kingdom, man, everyone is invited to be a part of it. And the second thing that we see is that in this kingdom, the kingdom of heaven, everyone enters through the same door. And that door is Jesus. He is the one who is completely full of grace and completely full of truth, the one who called sin, sin, and the one who came to give sinners hope, and the one who gave his life for sinners when we would choose sin over him. We enter through the same door, not because we've trusted in our ability to get it right and be good enough, but because we've trusted in his life, in his perfection, in his sacrifice, in his victory from the grave. And so everyone enters through that door, through the same door. And then the third thing we see is that everyone enters through the same door, the same way. In Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 9, it just captures this incredibly. It says, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves. It's the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. And so in this kingdom, everyone enters by coming to this point of honest reflection, of examination, of recognition, a point where we all admit that I need help, that I need forgiveness, that I need grace. And whether I showed up at 6 a.m. or 5 p.m., I didn't do anything to earn or to deserve this role. And whether I've done my best to be faithful or I'm full of regret, we all acknowledge that we are in need of God's kindness because we've come face to face with our own brokenness. And so we come to Jesus and we say, Jesus, if that's truly what you're offering, then I say yes. I want to say yes to that. That is incredible. I mean, this is a rule changer that benefits me, and I'm going to say yes to that. And then what happens is we are made right with God. And we're made right with God no matter how unright we've been. And we're made right with God no matter how unsettling that feels. And it's the same for others. There's a quote from author Philip Yancey, and I love the way he puts this. He says that grace does not depend on what we've done for God, but rather what God has done for us. Ask people what they must do to get to heaven, and most reply, well, be good. Jesus' stories contradict that answer. All we must do is cry, help. Let's close in prayer. Lord, that's what we want to do. Whether we find ourselves in a position like Zacchaeus or just the faithful followers, we just want to admit that we are in need of grace. We thank you, God, that you would break the rules for us, that you don't do the math the same way that we often do, and that you call us to be recipients of that grace. And that feels just incredible, the type of love you extend to us and the offer that you make available. And at the same time, we recognize that being part of your kingdom, and this kingdom of heaven that looks so different, means we don't just receive that, but we get to pass it on. We're not just recipients, but we bestow grace upon others as well. And I want to admit that I need your help with that. I need your help, especially as sometimes my idea of right and wrong or justice, or maybe even just my hope for revenge gets in the way. And so, God, we ask that you would give us your heart and give us your mind, that you would help us become like you and help us to bring your kingdom to this earth. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Scott. Hey, and thank you so much for being with us here tonight, joining us on this beautiful Saturday. We've got something fun planned for you afterwards. We've got some of our kids singing out in the lobby. There's going to be a hot cocoa bar, so we invite you to hang out. But before you take off, I just wanted to remind you about that Connect card. And if you're still watching online, you can fill this out on the app. Or if you're sitting here in this room, maybe you started on this, you can grab this, finish filling it out. You can tell us something you keep track of. And you can let us know how we can be praying for you, just anything going on. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's your first time or 50th time. Drop this off in the offering basket on your way out. And of course, you can drop your offering envelope in the offering basket. That seems rather obvious. And you can also drop this flyer off. And so as I encourage you to take some time during our gathering, check off some things that you can do. Please just finish filling that out. Take this flyer, the whole flyer, and as you're heading out, drop this in the offering basket. Join the Christmas celebration team. Love to be doing this together with you, all of us pitching in the ways that we all can. So throw that in the offering basket. What you do not want to throw in the offering basket, of course, are these invite cards. And you're sitting around, there's probably a few sitting around you. Grab one or two, please. We've got more on the tables outside. Grab a few of these. There are 2 more inviting weeks till Christmas. So grab a couple of these. Be thinking and praying about who you might invite to join us on on one of these great Christmas celebrations coming up in just a couple of weeks. With that said, I hope you will join us next weekend as we wrap up this series, part 3 of the Unsettling Solution for just about everything. God bless you guys. Have a fantastic week. We'll see you in the lobby as we listen to the kids sing. Have a great week.